Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with the Universe. I'm Monica Carless, author and mentor. Today, I'm in conversation with my friend and my colleague, Dina Strada, who is an event planner. She's an intuitive coach with a specialization in relationships. And she is the author of this amazing book, If I'm Honest, a no BS guide to loving yourself, navigating relationships, and trusting the journey. And I have read the stories, which are her own stories in this book, where it's like no bullshit, completely honest reflections on life. And I've reread some of these stories so many times just to remind myself of what I need to know to be in authenticity and integrity with myself. So, anyways, today we're going to be talking about um, what are we talking about? Let me look at my notes. Yes, feeling shame, feeling shame around our pain. Um, can we truly trust anyone with those feelings? And do we give ourselves away in our relationships too early? So I think it's going to be a really good segment. And welcome everyone, and welcome Dina.
Thank you, Monica. I always think there's no accidents. And so today is a particularly hard day for me. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay, why don't we start with that? Why don't we start with, since you are the queen of no bullshit, which I really appreciate.
and no
Uh,
emotion.
why don't we start with why is this a particularly difficult day? And we'll slide into the other segments after that.
I think, like you and I have talked about, I think like sometimes we get sideswiped by a person or a
Hmm.
relationship. And I know for myself, I don't like to allow somebody to take my power away or to uproot me at all. And I did let that happen recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a lot of shame around it, but I also feel very angry about it. And I feel like I can't talk to anybody about it, which is part of the reason why I'm having this conversation with you, because I think it's important that we out ourselves a little bit
Mm-hmm.
around that. I think the perception I give to most people is like very strong and independent. I don't need anybody. Like I'm good. I've been good for a long time, but I let this one take me down and I'm pissed about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why it took me down so much, but I think it's because I allowed myself to be vulnerable again. And that was very, very hard for me. Very hard. And I don't think the other person realized like what a big deal it was. Like sometimes you give someone a gift and they don't realize it's a gift. So they're like, meh, they just shove it aside but I think there's a teaching and a learning in there for us.
Can I read a little excerpt from your book, which I intuitively opened to today when I was preparing?
Go for it.
And so the chapter in the book is don't give yourself away too quickly. And so here's a little excerpt. I think sometimes we can give our hearts away prematurely in our quest to find that perfect love or fulfill some unrealistic fantasy we have in our heads of what the ideal relationship is. We can jump into things too quickly without giving the relationship time to breathe and organically find its own way. I've seen many men and women not taking the time to really get to know someone and ignoring the obvious things that don't work in the relationship simply because they want it to work so badly. So, what do you have to say about that?
Well, obviously, I think it's true. We all do it.
Yeah.
We all do it even when we think we're not doing it. And I think, often you either go into a relationship one or two ways. Like the first way is very guarded, and I can speak to that definitely. I went into every relationship after my divorce very guarded and like just put a wall up so I couldn't get hurt. And so I didn't really have any hope or expectation of anything. So
Yeah.
I was not disappointed. And that didn't work for me. And it doesn't work for a lot of people. There's a place where like you have to allow yourself, I think, to be vulnerable and be open if you want to experience anything, whether it's just connection or love, like even just the thought of that word is like makes me nauseous, but like
Mm-hmm.
just even connection. And so, I had done a lot of work around that. So I felt like I was in a place where I was willing to be a little bit more open.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I had expectations, but I think that deep down we always like when it's going well in the beginning, like you're like, huh, maybe this could work out, and
Yeah.
then when it kind of like goes off the rails, often people are like shocked and disappointed and like surprised why did that happen. But, a good friend of mine said recently, and I would tell this to anybody else that I was coaching, like, it really takes like 9 months to a year to really know somebody. Like you have to go through a lot of stuff together. Like we're all showing our best selves in the beginning and
Mm-hmm.
the side that we want that person to see. But like you have to go through a lot of stuff with somebody to really see what they're about. And people show you very quickly who they are. They
Mm-hmm.
do. Like how they show up in conflict, how they communicate, if they communicate, can they communicate? Can they be honest? Like people show that very quickly, and we have to listen to that and not make excuses for the other person, and so I think even when we don't want to, sometimes we do give our hearts away a little bit too quickly. And I don't know how much control we have over that. I think even the best of us sometimes like, you're trying to slow it down for yourself, but like feelings
Mm-hmm.
are feelings, right? Like it's like you can't control when you're angry, you can't control when you're sad, you can't control, you can try to talk yourself out of the feelings, but I think they're always there buried.
That's true. I really hear that. And myself as a person in a over 30-year relationship, you still don't know anybody after 30 years. Like, because we're always,
Scares me,
you know,
Monica.
you're always recreating yourself and you're growing and changing. And so you're always relearning about the person. But you do know the fundamentals. Like you do know the
Yeah,
fundamental things about a person. Unless something happens, they have a brain injury and now they're communicating in a very
right,
different way
right.
or something like that happens, right? Um, so I'm just thinking about your latest newsletter where you spoke about how you felt shame, around your pain. And
Mm-hmm.
can you really trust anyone to be truly honest with them about what your pain is and leaving that with them? Um, I know that you have experience with that. So, uh,
Is the question like, well, I can talk about the shame around pain
sure.
first. I
Yeah.
think that, I'm seeing it too with my mother recently lost my father, and I see like her try to hide how depressed and sad and like
Mm-hmm.
ruined she is, but like you can feel it energetically, right? So I think like we often know the people closest to us, like they're in a
Yeah.
lot of pain and everybody's trying to kind of like talk around it. I think there's
Mm-hmm.
shame in, we put a timeline on how long it's supposed to take to get over a situation or a person or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I remember a long time ago when I was going through my divorce, I remember being in like a therapy session. I was like, why am I not over this by now? Like, I should be over
Mm-hmm.
it. And my therapist was like, who said? Like, is
Mm-hmm.
there a timeline? Like, did you read that somewhere? Like, who said that, like, you got to be over it? And there's just such a frustration, I think, that we often feel when we're still sad about something a certain amount of time later. I think
Mm-hmm.
everybody goes through that. I have a lot of close friends that have shared with me, like, I feel so embarrassed to even talk to you about this. It might be somebody from 2 years ago, but I feel like, we get triggered or that person meant something to us or that situation meant something to us. And it's okay to feel that way. And you just have to find your people that are safe to talk to
Mm-hmm.
about it. Because we all have felt it. I personally am relieved when somebody brings up something that's like a while ago and says like, I still am hurt about this. I'm like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
get it.
Yeah.
Like I'm still hurt about some things that happened too a while ago. Like I think we carry that. And I would encourage people like you can't numb it away and you can't, oh, look at your cat.
This
you
is
know,
every
so
call.
the shame. And I think speaking that out loud too, and just saying like, I feel embarrassed, you know, like I feel embarrassed that I'm still feeling this way and I need to talk about it. Um,
Hmm.
and then the second part of that question, I think was, did you, and maybe
Can
reframe
we
it.
can we really trust someone with that? Our feelings of pain and maybe even shame.
I think certain people, I
Yeah.
think you have to find your people. You know, we all have
Yeah.
like our ride or die people that like know
Mm.
every part of us that can say to us, you know, I think that's being triggered for you because of this,
Yeah.
and that. Or I think you're still feeling that way, or you're feeling rejected because this thing happened. And I think it's like pulling that up, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to talk about it with, you know, every Joe Schmo because those people don't really know us. So I think we have to be very selective. I think it can be tricky with family, you know, like
Yeah.
some of us are very close with like, you know, our family, we feel like we can tell them. And then also I feel like, you know, your family can be your harshest critic sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, you know, but you know, find your people, I would say. Um, I will say often I don't feel safe. I don't feel
Yeah.
safe just in general, like being real about how I'm feeling about things. But, you know, I have days where I'm like, okay, it would be
Yeah.
okay to talk to this person.
Yeah. I really hear you on that. And obviously, I mean, I'm a Scorpio, so I'm secretive by nature. But I do have, and is one of the reasons why talk therapy has never really worked for me with like a traditional talk therapist, because I really need to know a person very well and intimately and really trust them to be able to share what's really poignant for me. And especially when it comes to conversations around pain or shame, there are a lot of things that I wouldn't share. I mean, I'm not going to share anything with a therapist. My
Yeah.
therapist, uh, you know, in air brackets, my therapists are people who, like, you're one of those people for me. I trust your coaching and I trust your mentorship. I have a few other friends who I feel super comfortable with too. And I know that they're not going to judge me. And if they are going to judge me, they are going to have a degree of compassion around their judgment. And I can trust that what they're going to tell me in response to what I share with them is going to be very authentic, and it's going to be meant to help me heal.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I do really need to know a person very well and really trust them to be able to share what's on my heart. And especially when it comes to things that normally we would feel ashamed of, like a breakdown of a relationship, or we've done something to hurt somebody else and now we have to own up to that. Those kinds of things I find really, really hard to share. Um, but yeah, but that's one of the things that I want to do on this podcast, is to be able to break through those barriers for myself and also for others. Um, yeah, so I really value you sharing your experiences. Whenever I read one of your newsletters, I feel like, I mean, you do share very honestly. I feel like I would love to have that degree of honesty that I would be able to share myself as well as you do.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, in full transparency, like I still feel as though I hold back a little bit. And because, you know, when we have an email list or when you're
Mhm.
a writer, anybody can read your stuff. Anybody, you don't know who's on that list. And so I write everything with the lens of who is the one person I would not want to know that I feel this way, and make the
Right.
assumption that they're going to read it. And that makes it really hard. So I like, you know, praise to like writers that really can tell the full truth.
Mhm.
I will share like on my own email list, like the last thing that I did write and share was probably the most honest thing that I put out there and the most vulnerable. And I had one person, you always said that one person, like that one, can I curse on this?
Yeah.
An
Yeah.
asshole. Like, this was not helpful. You
Yeah.
know, I feel like you're blah, 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 blah. And like every part of me wanted to respond to that because it's
Hmm.
so hard as a writer or as a human being to share the truth. And then I was like, you know what, man, she's entitled to her opinion. Like, let her have it. I don't even need to respond to that. And that is also
Hmm.
what I would say about like when we feel pain or when we feel sad or like it doesn't always need to be like hurled at the other person who hurt us. Sometimes it just needs to be processed in a safe
Right.
place. I think silence says a lot more to another
Hmm.
person. Like I know for myself, like I know when I've hurt somebody, I do. I know. And like I'm already carrying around like the shame around that or the embarrassment or like I'm questioning myself and could I have done that better? And like the person being silent,
Hmm.
that was right in the throat chakra. That was weird. It says everything when somebody goes silent.
Hmm.
It says like, I'm so hurt, I can't even like engage with you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I think that there's wisdom in not sharing everything with everyone, and there's also wisdom in sharing the things that we need to work through, and being outward about it is very helpful. Um, there are for people who are creatives who are writing like their soul out on paper for everybody to read, or people who are mentors or coaches, there is a degree of wanting to preserve a presence, or preserve, we put on a certain mask,
Sure.
where, not that we know everything or that we've worked through everything, because then you can't be an effective, mentor to anyone, but we still don't want to air all our dirty laundry,
Right.
because people, we're all judgy, like people are going to
Judge.
say, well,
Yeah.
you're a hot mess, so why would I come to you for for any assistance? But
I
I
think
think,
behind the scenes, everybody would think they're a hot mess in some area of life.
yeah.
And honestly, like I like to work with people who like aren't putting on a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't also like having worked with like, I'm sure you know this too, like having coached and worked with like hundreds of people.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their stuff. Everybody, the most successful, the most
Yeah.
brilliant, the most put together, like everybody, like none of us is immune to, going through things or doing really shameful things. So when I have somebody say to me, "Oh my God, I've never told anybody this, and I'm so
Mm-hmm.
ashamed," they break down crying, they tell me, I've never in my life been like, "Oh, what? You did what?" I'm just like, "Is that it?"
Yeah. Yeah. You're
Like
you're
I've heard this
human.
a million
Yeah.
times. Makes me feel
Yeah.
better about the mistakes I made. I think the
Mm-hmm.
people that don't share are the people that like, I think they do have, stuff that they're embarrassed about, and it just would feel awkward for them to air it out. And like I know people are judgy about writers and people that like share all their stuff and like that's
Mm-hmm.
fine, I mean, that's okay. I think that comes from a place of insecurity about being real about their own stuff. But again,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, in terms of going back to giving ourselves away too early in a relationship, I think that can be said about any kind of relationship, like whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or whatever. I think that we need to really be um, honest with ourselves about where we're at and how much we want to share and how much we want to let the other person in. Um, but again, there's a balance of not keeping ourselves. So, oh, an alarm's going off for something I don't want to do. Um, not expecting the other person to be able to also give us as much of themselves as we think that they should be able to give us,
yeah,
giving the relationship spaciousness.
yeah.
Um,
I think that's important too, is like everybody moves at their own pace. And it's really having respect for where another person is at and
Mm-hmm.
where their comfort level is and sharing of themselves. And I think that
Mm.
is often what determines compatibility too, is that
Right.
you don't want to be in relationship or even friendship with somebody who's completely closed off and cannot share anything at all about how they feel. I don't think that's healthy. I think you have to find somebody who sort of meets you where you're at, or at least can say, you know, I take a little while to open up, or, like that communication, or I feel a little guarded because that's communication, but just like not giving anything and withholding and being like a wall. I don't think that's somebody that anybody can be in relationship with. It's even harder in a friendship. And,
Mm-hmm.
we all have people in our life that, you're friends with them and they reveal nothing. And there's only so deep those relationships can go. I think those are
Yeah.
people you can like go out and have a good time with, go out and have a drink with, but you're never going to go deeper than that because they won't reveal anything about themselves. I think in romantic relationship, again, like if you just want to go out with somebody and have a good time and, companionship, whether they open up or not, like I guess that doesn't matter. If you're looking for something that's a little bit deeper than that, then the two of you need to be able to communicate a little bit with each other. And again, like at a pace that feels good for both of you. But that's often it's different, as human beings, we're not wired to be exactly the same and move at exactly the same pace at the same time. If you've found somebody in your life and you guys were able to do that, like my husband and I think that's why it worked. Like we were kind of on the same page
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, moved at the same pace, and it just felt so easy. I often go back and I'm like, God, why can't something be as easy as that was? But you
Mm-hmm.
can't compare. Every relationship's different.
No, and it's also about managing expectations about what somebody is able to provide for us or what we're able to provide for someone, and also being in ownership of our own relationship with ourselves.
Right.
And sometimes we can find clues in our relationship with ourselves as to how that's being mirrored in a relationship, with somebody else. So
Mm.
there's a lot to it. But you know what? You give so much. I'm holding up your book again. You give so much amazing advice in this book, if I'm honest, and I think it is very brave. You know, like I wrote on the cover blurb here of your book about finding comfort in the uncomfortable and laughter in the tragedy. I think that we're all going through similar things, and you know, shame around our pain is one of those things that I think we can all understand and tap into and know that sometimes we do need to find safety in someone. We need to be able to share about that shame and be able to say, this thing didn't work out and I feel shame around it. And we feel that it's a reflection of who we are as a human being. And we don't want somebody else to see who we really are as a human being. So then it's hard to share.
I think I would encourage, like, I know you and I talked about like, what we wanted listeners and people to get from this. It's so important. And I'm like putting myself out there by saying it. Like, I've been in it the last few months, and I'm telling you, like, if I did not have my safe people to talk to
Hmm.
right now, I would be crying every day.
Yeah.
Just Um, there's good and bad days, but it's like when you get triggered by something or an event or a person, it's so important to be able to find, I don't care who your safe people are, even if it's one, to be able to say like, I'm in pain or I'm still sad or I don't know why this is still bothering me, but I just have to speak it out loud and then I can move on you
Hmm.
know, but keeping it in, I'm telling you, like keeping it in does not heal it and does not make it go away and does not make it not exist. It doesn't. It's still there. And I think the only way, and I say this in the book, like you got to feel it to heal it, and feeling it feels so crappy sometimes, but like feeling it gets it out and it gives it a voice, and then it can kind of pass through us. And sometimes it takes time for it to pass through us, but eventually every emotion passes through us, like you
Mhm.
think back to all the things that have happened in your life and the things that were painful, typically it's just a scar and you kind of like, you remember it's there, but it's not throbbing and hurting the way it was like, a month after
Mhm.
the injury or 5 months or 6 months or whatever it was, however long it took to heal. So I just think talking it through is so important. Listening, I know for me, listening to podcasts, like sometimes I just put a podcast on and I hear exactly what I need to hear and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, hey, that person's going through that too. I don't feel like such a loser.
I know you're not a loser because of your fingernails. I've been so distracted by your, like, how did you even do that? Your coordinated green, red fingernails with your green and red rings. I mean, that's
Thanks for
spectacular.
noticing that, Monica. See, even in my sadness, I can keep my nails together.
That's right. And I really respect that.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you for showing up today and for speaking your truth and for always showing up as I see it. Like when I read your newsletters or I read your book or I listen or I read your things that you post on Instagram or other social media, which I've really been enjoying your little short blurbs. They're so helpful. Um, so thank you for being you and thank you for always being my safe place.
Thank you
And
for being my safe place and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I think it's such a timely topic and I know a lot of people are in it right now. So
yeah, and I think like our shared humanity is so healing. If we can talk about things and we can just realize that everybody's going through something hard.
yeah.
And yeah, we need to have compassion for that. So I'm going to link your book at the bottom of the podcast. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And thank you, Dina, for being here. I
Thank you,
appreciate you.
Monica, for having me. I appreciate you too.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.